So let's start and be quick. There is plenty to say. This is an exciting time. So thank you for all the panelists to have the exact perfect introduction to the next panel as well. So thanks. So couldn't do it better. We're talking about business of trust. We're inviting here, as you can see, Michael Bradford, the product and director for CPaaS at Syniverse. Where's the next one? Olly Brough from the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Trusona, and Catalin Badea, the VP in Product Management at NetNumber Global Data Services. And by the way, as you might remember from last night drinks, I so well remember to say thank you to our sponsors. So thank you to NetNumber for sponsoring these sessions as well. If you don't mind, I think it's probably easier for me to stand here because I'm so bad with microphones as well. So just let me do these. It's like magic. Can you hear me?
It's better if you hold it.
Okay. I will hunch over this wonderful position. Well, anyway, we're talking, you might have heard it before, but talking about the business of trust and what's at the heart of communication industry. Those are words that Meth would really be happy to be saying on a regular basis. It's great. It's what we stand here for. But aren't these also words so nice, but are they easy to say? But what's behind it? What's the meaning behind it? So, well, we got 3 people. Please help me by asking very tough questions to them. You know, we want to give them a bit of a hard time. They're saying something so nice. Okay, well let's try it out. But first, let's try identifying a bit more what the topic is and introducing them a bit and what they do about this. So I will start with Trusona, Olly, because you probably are the company which is slightly less well known.
I'm an outsider, or we're an outsider. Is that switched on?
Green light, and there you
go. Yeah, so I'm an outsider. We're an outsider to the mobile ecosystem, and the only reason we got involved is actually our first customer for our latest product drove us into the mobile world by saying. So maybe I should explain what we do. Basically, Trusona is a technology company. We're a member of the FIDO Alliance, which includes and is led by Apple, Google, and Microsoft. And what they're doing is introducing this new passkey technology. And we're one of those members that is helping to enable digital brands, to enable passkey, and to move away from what we thought was passwords. But actually, when our first customers came to us, the first thing they wanted to do was to get rid of SMS, and hence the reason for me to be trying to understand this marketplace more, because clearly there's a dynamic to play around there, and potentially there's money to go around. But I'm learning every day as to what the opportunities might be. So that's me.
Thank you. That's a business of trust, identified, very fine, knowing who you're dealing with. Very, very briefly, then I will ask before going to Catalin, a quick introduction about, maybe we don't need, but what is Syniverse? But why is Syniverse?
No, Mike is Syniverse.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. So, but first, so Michael, then we will.
Okay.
Catalin. Yeah, I will ask Catalin later to summarize a bit. But can you tell us what Syniverse, carriers, enterprises, and verification?
Yeah, so Syniverse, the marketing tagline is we're the world's most connected company. And we're kind of behind the scenes in the mobile industry, surveying the whole ecosystem. So big part of our business is supporting a lot of the operators in this world. So really boring things like roaming, but then also from the messaging side also. So it's not just the technology of the APIs and how you connect and how you send it, but settling all of the money that goes backwards and forwards, and also the protection layers too. So we spend a lot of time. People have mentioned 10 DLC in the States. So we're one of the directly connected aggregators in that market. We also do a lot of filtering to reduce spam and smishing and so on. So we do a lot of things on the carrier side, but also on the enterprise side. So we kind of deliver billions of SMS every single year, not just in the US, but globally. And, a big part of what we see is people use SMS because it's trusted, and how do you deliver trust, which requires a whole number of different solutions as part of that. So.
Great. So thank you, but I did say I was going to leave Catalin for last, because we have heard even from the keynote how netnumber is positioned there, how is important the trust element. Now, help me out here to identify a bit more of the issue specifically. So what are we talking about? Why is verification of the heart of this?
Yeah, trust is definitely, big topic. I think what we'd like to focus here today is user verification. And I like to start here actually to say that, from a user onboarding perspective, I'm still surprised to see how infrequent, key elements that are provided upon user sign up are verified. And particularly those that we think are, user identifiers like emails and telephone numbers. I still receive a lot of emails that are clearly not spam, but they come from legitimate companies that didn't even verify the possession of that email address. And, there is even one operator in that category. They should know better. I think that happens, more frequently with phone numbers. I think by now the industry kind of knows I should verify if a phone number actually is in the possession of the person, signing up. More frequent for, I would say, account creation, less frequent for one-time transactions like, maybe purchasing something. But that kind of happens. What doesn't happen enough, in my opinion, is checking the phone number reputation. You could have a phone number in your possession, but if you go there with evil intention, what's going to happen is that you're starting to reset your password 100 times, and here is how you contribute to the generated artificial generated traffic. So yeah, I think all in all, what we're going to speak is about user verification and kind of what tools out there to make this keep this simple and streamlined from a don't make it more difficult for users, but make it more secure for enterprises.
Now, if you're watching now live, you probably know, but if in case you're on one of your on-demand, there is a nice 3 elements that came one after the other. We started talking about verifying the sender, the companies themselves, so to speak, or the companies involved in this. We talked about the channels, and here we're talking about verifying the users, almost the last bit. In itself as well, if I summarize badly as I do, well, we start with Trusona, which is looking at, from Fido, devices and more. We have Syniverse, which is one of the champion for the SMS channel. And then that number, a bit of everything, I should say. But realistically here, championing almost the phone numbers and the itself, the authorization for that. So 3 different things. But let's start with what Catalin was just saying. The phone number is somehow linked to everything we do as a feature or something. But how important is it really? And I'll throw it back to you, to Catalin. Can we have a phone number? Is it secure enough to have a phone number of a center?
Yeah, I think what's important about the phone number is that it's really ubiquitous, and one way, shape, or form, it does get collected within user onboarding flows. And it's not something new. It's been like this for a very long time. What's changed is kind of the technologies that are there to verify the legitimacy of a phone number and the reputation of it. So maybe 20 years ago we were looking at simple things like HLR queries. Is the phone number valid, invalid, active, inactive? There was a certain time and place for that. By now, I would say that's not something that companies should use anymore due to limitations in coverage and enormous latency. What's kind of been the phone number verification tool for the past many years was one-time passwords, and they are great to check the phone number possession by a certain user. As I mentioned earlier, you can't really say much about the reputation of the phone number by just sending one SMS. So we see now that the market is evolving towards other data points, in particular the operator APIs. And it's simple things like silent authentication, but then also the other data sets and data points like the tenure of a phone number, is the number associated with a user that's within country, or roaming. So these are, I would say, super valuable, and there is a certain level of fragmentation. They're not yet deployed globally, but these kind of tools are in a way a superset of what you can do with a simple OTP message.
So Olly, from your side, what's the role of a phone number in your authentication toolkit?
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, I mean, the other thing is that the phone number endures. These things now, we tend to change them every sort of 18 months, or if you smash it on regularly, probably more regular than that. And so it doesn't endure, where phone numbers do. And it's almost become like my phone number is almost like my identification number. So in my world, in the world of online security, then if you have a credential, we call a credential, could be a password, or it could be a pass key, which is what Apple, Google, and Microsoft are introducing, which is very strong and unphishable. The fact that it's very strong and unphishable actually means nothing if I can't actually establish trust in that credential in the first place. So in other words, we talk in our industry the difference between onboarding and then re-authentication. So when a customer first comes, the pass key is dumb and useless in its own right until additional checks have been done to check that, maybe I'm Olly Brough, that phone number is registered to my account. I'm in control of that phone number. Are there any other fraud signals associated with that? And really the value opportunity that passkey presents is around orchestrating all of those different data elements around probably the number one most important thing in our life, which is our phone number, because it oversees everything that we do, our Google accounts, our Apple accounts, and the like. And so that is why we recognize that actually the value in this passkeys itself is limited. It's the orchestration of all of the other elements, and most organizations want to be able to analyze the mobile number and its association with the customer. So that's why this sort of ecosystem is very important to us, despite the fact that passkey will reduce in time. I think we're already seeing that with Google volumes, reduce the volume of SMS OTPs, because brands will want to still do those checks, but then the subsequent checks, the regular checks, they can do natively through the website, because basically passkey is launched from the browser on a device, and you have to then unlock your device with typically your biometric to then release the passkey. And that's how that works. And a lot of those transactions, but I think will move across in that direction. However, it places more emphasis and more value on the use case of using these messaging channels to then be able to establish trust in the first place.
Okay. So we're separating, if you want, still using very much a phone number and so on, but separating the last mile sometimes being features of a phone itself, but you still need a root authority, which could be even the phone number.
Yeah, and I think we were talking some of the previous presentations about thinking about the use cases just as about rather than the transactions and the value of the use cases. And what's interesting is this industry today would charge the same for a onboarding SMS, of course, because it's the same thing as you would do for a re-authentication SMS, but actually the value is that first SMS to establish trust is really significant.
Well, let's talk about the company that delivers billions of SMS. So let's talk to Michael at Syniverse. How do you see the phone number itself, and how do you see this question of verification, let's say in general?
I mean, it's really interesting, because the phone number is a classic example. It was never designed to identify a single person, and it's become that. It's become that standard, and it's not because it's the most secure. It isn't the most trusted. It's not designed to be it, but it's the most useful. And we often over-index and often concentrate too much on fraud and trust. They're really important, but there's also a trade-off. It's a complex thing. You can have something which is really high trust, but if it costs a lot and the user experience is terrible, nobody's going to use it. It isn't going to help protect users. So the phone number is really useful from the user experience and so on, as well as trust. And it's really important now, because we're doing that. You need to link the phone number to identity. And this is where netnumber are talking about, the verification of end users. Is it the right person? And that's, if you look at the onboarding journey, if you can establish that at the start, you then get the trust, which you can then mean that you can leverage things like passkeys later on. A passkey is great to know it's the same device or the same user who's coming back. But, you rely on things like the phone number to establish that trust in the first place. And I think this is really interesting, particularly from the Syniverse point of view. So we do lots of SMS, but we do lots of other things also. And you need to have that multi-layers, because it's a complex problem with the ecosystem, with omni-channel, and probably with perhaps what you call omni-authentication moving forwards. It's not just SMS, but it'll be passkey, silent auth. You need to get all those different, because it's a complex problem, you need to get all those different layers working together, but make sure that they're orchestrated and integrated too. And I think that's a great challenge we have to address as an ecosystem to deliver that for end users. So.
Well, we had a chat before we set up this call, and it was fantastic. There were so many topics we can cover. One of them that came out of this part of the conversation, but also in their conversation, is the use cases, the kind of things you do with verification, or when you do it at different steps. You start now, later. How do you keep on knowing these phone numbers? How they work over the time, etc. Well, let's start with Catalin again. How do you think that there's a chain of verification? How does it start? What are the main steps in it?
Yeah, so here I'd like to actually follow up on something that Olly said. I think we've established that phone number verification is essential for user onboarding, but then there is a discussion to be had about what's the process for the repeated logins into a service. And here I think the trend that you've mentioned with some of the brands when they are replacing one-time passwords with other technologies like passkeys, and this topic also came earlier in the hot panel, where it seems that it's a trend, and we agree with that. If it's for financial reasons, if it's for security reasons, if it's for user experience reasons, it appears that the market is moving in this direction. So that's great. I think what we still need to look at from a phone number perspective is that user who's logging into the account the same user that I signed up originally. And this is where phone number intelligence can help to determine that. In particular, things like account takeover. I think this is the typical example. Did the number port from one operator to another? Was the SIM swap maybe changed? So, or maybe the phone number shows up into one of the industry fraud lists as being associated with someone, doing AIT or doing what other nefarious activities. So from that perspective, I still think the phone number has a role to play. Maybe less so from receiving one-time passwords upon repeated logins, but from the perspective of making sure that the user is still who they originally were, and then also in terms of keeping my enterprise opt-in database clean. I think that's also something that we need to look at. Phone numbers, deactivate, they change owners, these kind of things. So it is our recommendation that brands should have some processes in place to keep up with that. And sometimes it's just for good for their marketing budget spend efficiency, but in some geographies this is actually mandated. US is an example. It's not the only one, I guess, where if a phone number gets deactivated, you need to opt them out from all marketing programs, and the number will get reassigned, and the user has to sign up to those marketing programs. Yeah.
Olly, so you.
So I totally agree. I think what I was talking about, establishing trust in a credential or passkey, for example, and what Catalin says is there's then an ongoing process of maintaining hygiene of that credential, and you need to do these checks in the background to make sure that nothing's changed. So I think that's true. In terms of specific use cases, what we see, so for example, account servicing. So if you're a CPaaS vendor, then with some of the work we looked at, sort of uncovered the fact that the use case tends to be non-high security type transactions, and there's a reticence to actually do high security type transactions across messaging channels, even encrypted messaging channels, because one thing you can't do is exchange security information via a messaging chat. People don't want to do that. So there are opportunities then to be able to use these newer types of authentication technologies which don't disclose any information and just require a sort of tap and unlock of your device to then basically prove who you are. So going deeper into the account servicing journey, I think, is one use case. We see things like age verifications, for example, in some adult content. So there are lots of different use cases, and we think in our industry, we always think about use case. We don't really necessarily think about channel. It's interesting seeing the difference. But yeah, all those different use cases have significantly different value in our world. And so it's interesting to me to be part of a world that thinks of things more around transactions,
Interestingly, we start looking at the verification and say it's easy, it's at the heart of everything we do. And then we realized what is verification? Because verification is a time continuum from the first to the last one to the turning off verification. It's a quality of what kind of things you verify. It's a use cases. And it's a channels themselves what you might be doing it. So there are multiple. This is a very three-dimensional view.
Yeah, so I'd almost say is like that whilst there are threats, of course, actually there are opportunities as well, because if you're a CPaaS vendor, then the new technology will make conversational commerce more available for many more different use cases. I think that's my point.
Fantastic. Well, in that case, Michael, how would you then define these things as verification? What is this end user verification for you? How would you be? Is it still about SMS, or is it more than that?
It's bigger than that. SMS is a tool. So SMS, like a phone number, it's a tool. It wasn't designed to be secure, but it's a really useful and cost-effective way of doing it. And it's a key part of that. So we talk about omni-channel moving forwards. SMS is going to be a key part of how do you reach all of your users. So as these new channels come in RCS, we aren't talking about SMS being replaced by RCS. We're using omni-channel for a specific reason, because it's going to be SMS and RCS and all of these other channels too, most of which are based around the phone number. And I think it's really interesting when you talk about verification of the end user, because it's interesting from the data privacy point of view. We talk about all these different data points, but you need to do it in a very data privacy sensitive way, particularly in Europe with GDPR and various other domains too. But I think it's also really interesting because, the danger is we can have a very siloed approach across these different channels. And we're already seeing, there's already been reports where people are getting spam from a phone number across RCS, that gets blocked down, and then they get SMS spam from the same phone number. And the common thread across all of these different channels is the phone number. And I think this is where things like the verification of the phone number and the trust, is really important as to prevent fraud just moving across all these channels backwards and forwards. So,
okay. Well, so we spoke about this before. I don't know if I have jokingly, but in our call when we said, so what's the best solutions? It's not an easy way, because it looks like you have to collect all of these different elements. What time is it? What kind of use cases it is, etc. But I'm going to ask unfair questions. So I wrote down the most secure, the easiest, and the cheapest solution, because everything, probably not such a thing, but what would you put forward as something for this group to think about? We'll start with Catalin as well. So what would you say, which is a combination that can work of all these things?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if there is one solution. It's definitely multidimensional, as you said. So from our area of expertise, obviously, I will speak here about phone number intelligence, and kind of from the perspective that each phone number tells a story. Here, I think the value that we bring is that while there is a lot of data about phone numbers, and in particular, both phone number verification data and fraud prevention data, so there is a lot of data like it out there. It's just that it's extremely fragmented, and you're looking at hundreds of data sets and hundreds of signals. So for your average enterprise, and also possibly for the very large enterprises, they simply don't have the expertise, the access, and even the human power to bring all this together. Here, having a comprehensive phone number verification, phone number reputation solution that can solve that part of the equation. And like I said, it's not everything. There are also other items to be considered, but at least from a phone number verification perspective, I think we would be able to support there.
Olly, you mentioned before in our chat as well, attributes and review. Is that similar? What is the best one? What kind of are you looking for? Are you looking for a solution? Are you looking for like attributes? What would you be shopping for in terms of verification?
Gosh. Well, I think it's verification solutions. There's it's a whole. There's an ecosystem of its own as well. So I'm afraid there's no simple answer to that. It is based. We spend a lot of our time looking at, as I said, what is the use case, and every use case is very specific, and we'll have different compliance requirements around know your customer, compliance, whatever it might be, anti-money laundering guidelines, that sort of stuff. So there's a whole host of different solutions based upon the different scenarios. But what it always comes back to is, as I said, at the beginning, is the mobile number. So I think that's why it's ubiquitous. Everyone's got it, can get it, and I think having trust in it is absolutely fundamental to pretty much all use cases in this sort of business to consumer world. Whether you're operating a bank, running an e-commerce shop, running a publishing business, or operating an online casino, it all comes back to wanting to be able to twin the identity with the mobile number and the piece of tin in your hand, and that's probably the three key things.
We've seen there's a lot of growing. Michael, then I'd like you to add the perspective of the carriers in these, because carriers and enterprises is what you do. You're close to them. Is this a good thing that verification of a user is really becoming a more three-dimensional, more complex model?
Oof, that's a big question. I mean, it has to be good because it's good for the end users. It's good for adoption. What it means is the carriers isn't necessarily delivering every part of that. They're delivering a core part of that, but you as the whole, actually probably a different way of looking at it is you look at it from, people talk about SMS growth. If you look at it from identity growth and authentication growth, that's going to keep on growing, and that growth is going to be across a range of different channels. It's not just going to be SMS, but SMS and a lot of the other carrier identity and authentication solutions are going to grow with that, so that it's like the rising tide. The rising tide is going to help the carriers. Are the carriers going to capture all of that moving forwards? No, but they're definitely going to benefit from this growth of the range of different methods which you can combine together with the carrier phone number, the identity, the attributes, the authentication, and it's going to benefit the carrier as well as the rest of the ecosystem. So
yeah. Well, thank you. I get a bit excited about these. At one point, as we heard and mentioned before, are we beating ourselves too much? But it looks like there are good solutions and good, exciting things that are happening out there. Though, I know that online, my mom probably not here, but we do have enterprises. Now, have we been too harsh on us? And should we just call the enterprises to do something more? Is there something that the enterprise need to ask, to implement, or to do better? Who would like to have a go of the enterprise? There we go. This is the end of today's. I'm sure that some of you will say something. These are your clients.
Yeah.
Tell them off if they. Michael.
So with the enterprises, it's all about the right tool, and I think definitely you go and speak to enterprises and, you kind of want to understand what they want. I'm going to wear my product hat now. So, you don't necessarily want to go to customers and ask them what they want. You want to understand what their problems are. So enterprise problems are key. So it's enterprise problems with trust and security and cost and so on. It's really important to understand that. But I see our role, and this ties in with some of the things that Tim mentioned earlier, and some of the other guys. We use lots of terms enterprises don't understand. They aren't experts in what we have available, what's in the toolbox. It's our role to speak to enterprises to understand the problems and then to advise them in terms of what's the best solution in the toolbox. And it's not a single one. It's not always going to be identity. It's not always going to be passkeys. It's not always going to be SMS. It's having that right tool in the toolbox to address the customer issues.
So because you heard before, and we had a previous panel, how asking them, we sometimes you're asking a very complicated question to enterprises. Well, do they know enough in the first place to manage and choose, understand the technology, understand the threats out there?
Yeah. So for me, the silver bullet that will probably never materialize in my world, which is around, as I said, authenticating people, is if it is possible. I mean, it's great that we can verify a mobile number, but if actually I can associate this new credential, a passkey that's unphishable, is unstealable, and it is, if I can link that to the operator's mobile number record and effectively triangulate that information so that it is constantly improving and updating, then that is really the holy grail, because the telco have my identity. They have a load of information about how I'm using that mobile number and all of the risk signals and so forth. And if they can then provide that link through to the passkey, then there are so many enterprise high security businesses, sort of high risk businesses that need that, whether a bank, a publishing company, gambling company, that needs this information and spends so much time and so much money trying to do this, but can't do it very well because that complete loop triangulation is not there. And so there is an opportunity. What's really interesting and is, some of the telcos are already adopting passkey. So they've already got a passkey associated with a customer record, associated with a phone number, associated with identity, with all the biographic data sitting behind it. And that is incredibly powerful. But the question is, are we able to use it? And I think that's the big question that I'd love to try and resolve. But if we could give me that, then I'll be a billionaire this time next year.
Okay, 1 billionaire more in the world, but we hope at least. I'm going to ask Catalin to do some of the closing remarks. Before that, I might ask you if you have one question, or if online we have any questions for these panels of some things we've said. If not, no, I will try. No, okay. In that case, I'll try to create a bit of problems between the two of you. First of all, but before I do that, thank you for saying Holy Grail, because this is the place where it was supposed to be kept. We are in the inner temple, the Knights Templar, so the Holy Grail was somewhere here. So that's why I'm saying you might be very close to, the at least fictional one.
King John is listening.
King John is listening after all, and after all of these, and the all the mysteries that were surrounded all of them. There are mystery probably surrounded around verification. One for me is also, in the business of trust, do the different companies trust each other? Or should they trust each other? T-Mobile, only last week, was fined for the second time because one of his employees had, effectively generated or moved SIMs to one account to another as a fraudulent event. No, same T-Mobile US, large enterprise, perfect, well secure, cybersecurity. But there is at the end that feature, the factor is, are we all secure? How can you trust? I mean, that's a big. What about a small operator with less resources? What about a big company, a small company? How do you infuse trust in the supply chain? Oh, Catalin brings up his microphone. I can see a volunteer for the answer.
I think, I'd like to believe that people have good intentions and companies have good intentions. I think it's more about, bad processes. And, I have a personal example here. I just received a phishing SMS that was so obvious, a phishing SMS, that my operator could have detected it. So they are obviously doing something wrong in their SMS firewall that they, couldn't detect that. So it's simple things like that, where, maybe a little more work, a little bit of strengthening the process would make the entire ecosystem a little more trustworthy.
So, Olly, do you trust each other? Do you trust Michael and Catalin?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Yes. Yeah. I'm not sure I can comment on the origination of traffic and so forth. It's not my area of expertise. So I can't really comment on that. But yeah, no, I love you guys. Yeah.
So they're friends still. What about you, Michael? What do you think about the supply chain and security?
It is. I mean, it's not a 1-0 answer. We talk about trust scores, and it's kind of obvious that there's different operators, for example, are going to have different trust scores. And I kind of know of companies in the past who've looked at the carrier, the operator, which a phone number belongs to, and use that as part of the trust score. So it's kind of obvious that that's part of the. It's not a black and white answer. There's levels of trust out there, and they vary. And often, as Catalin says, it's not necessarily because there's bad actors in the company. There's like weaknesses in terms of process and so on. All the difficult, boring stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's important to have trust among the different parts of the ecosystem, and I think part of that is having the right information and being able to work together to be able to establish that. So.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll hope we're going to find a process. And by the way, one of the suggestions from the last days from one of our members has been to look at specifying a bit more, just like in the credit card and the financial industry, what would be an identity, not even best practice, but kind of rules or minimum code of conduct or something like that. I mean, that's an open discussion for all of us. But you will see that thanks for the suggestion of this member, we'll come back to you and provide some more of the supply chain verification of minimum behaviors expected of this. Well, with that, I did promise that, first of all, I would thank you all because of a fantastic and lively debate. It is time for me to ask for the last few words for the panel. Catalin, can you summarize?
Sure. And I would like to link here to something that Mike said. I think each enterprise is obviously unique, and the use cases might seem similar on the surface, but there are nuances and they're implemented differently. So I think our role here is to actually encourage and help them experiment with these tools. If it's phone number intelligence, if it's passkeys, if it's mobile operator APIs, all these things, I think I do think they provide value, but I think we need to help enterprises also demonstrate and not just believe it, but demonstrate it. So things like POCs, things like trials, all these things that we can do for them to show them that what's the uptick in customer sign up, what's the downwards trend in fraudulent users that sign up, how is the user experience improving. We should like I said, help them to experience that.
Great. Well, thank you. And with that, I'd like to thank you all again, starting with Olly Brough. Thank you very much. Michael Bradford and Kathleen Badea. Thanks. Let's give you a round of applause.